Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The start of the day was on a positive note. When I was driving to work, I managed to avoid the usual morning traffic, and to my delight, the parking spot was conveniently located right by the entrance. About an hour after I arrived, my secretary Natalie popped into my office to let me know that Tom Snelling was on the second line, waiting for me. Answering the call, I greeted him and listened as he informed me that after careful consideration, he was ready to sign the contract. This was a contract I had been pursuing for nearly 3 months, a contract worth over $5 million for our company. During our conversation, Tom told me that he had sent the signed contract via fax. I expressed my gratitude, and as soon as he hung up, I headed for the fax machine. Sure enough, the contract was already waiting for me. Taking the documents in hand, I made my way to Barry's office. He's my boss and the owner of the company, so I asked his secretary if he had a moment to spare. Confirming that he was free, I entered his office, ready to share the good news. I handed him the contract, and he smiled as he glanced at it. Not believing that I would be able to achieve this, he remarked that several other employees had unsuccessfully tried to do the same. But Barry smirked and noted that my bonus from this deal would be quite substantial, then added that it was time for me to get back to my duties. Closer to 10 o'clock, Stella, the boss's secretary, called and informed me that Barry urgently needed to see me. As I crossed the threshold of his office, I began to sit down, but he asked me not to bother, assuring me that I wouldn't be staying long enough to get comfortable. He then announced that as of noon today, I would be the new vice president of sales. As one of my first duties as vice president, I would need to fly to Texas to resolve some issues with Mike Thomas, one of our key clients. Mentioning that Stella had all the necessary details, he sent me on my way. After approaching Stella to pick up the documents, she offered to help organize the trip, but I politely declined, saying I could handle it myself. I returned to my office and tried to call my wife, Terry, to share the good news with her, but I found that she wasn't at work, so I left a message asking her to call me back. As I left home to pack for the trip, I noticed Terry's car parked outside. This seemed rather odd to me, but I parked behind her car. As soon as I stepped through the door, I felt something was wrong. Her voice echoed from the rooms, urging someone to hurry up. Gripped by curiosity and fear, I headed to the bedroom where I found Randall Cunningham, her boss, in bed with my wife. They were so engrossed in what they were doing that they didn't even notice me standing at the door. The noise they made drowned out the sound of my phone as I took pictures. Quickly reviewing the photos, I made sure I had clear shots of both their faces before quietly leaving the house. The drive back to the firm took about 30 minutes. Upon arrival, I asked the receptionist if I could see Bart Sampson. Bart and I had a friendly relationship, and he stood up to greet me, extending his hand as I entered his office. "Good to see you, Rob," he said. "Did you come by to invite Terry to lunch? But you're too late. She's not at home." "I have information about where she is and with whom," I replied, pulling out my phone to show him the pictures. "Tell me, when exactly did you take these photos?" "About 30 minutes ago." "And where were they taken?" "On my bed. They didn't even see me taking the pictures. They were supposed to be having lunch with one of our clients." He looked through the files on his desk, read me a number, and asked, "Is this Terry's mobile number?" I nodded in agreement, and he picked up the phone to call. We waited, and eventually the call was answered. "Terry, your husband is in my office, and he just showed me some very inappropriate photos of you with Randall, which he took about 30 minutes ago. You both need to return here, collect your personal belongings, and head to HR to receive your final paycheck. You both need to be out of this building by 5 o'clock. There was a brief silence before he continued. "No need, Terry. There's nothing to discuss. Goodbye." He hung up the phone and, turning to me, said, "I'm sorry, Rob, but I had no idea there was anything between them. So what are your plans? Will you divorce her? What I mean is, how will this affect your relationship with my company?" "None. If you have a policy against their actions and you had to enforce it, it's clear to me that you were as unaware of their activities as I was. I just regret that I won't be seeing you at corporate events and meetings anymore. Finally, I stood up, we shook hands, and I started to leave. But before I could reach the door, he called out to me, "One more thing, before you meet with a lawyer." I turned to face him. "I've never done business with your company before because your wife worked there, and I was always concerned about a potential conflict of interest. Now that Terry no longer works here, give me a call next week, okay?" In response, I smiled and said, "I will definitely call." With that, I left to find a store where I could buy everything I needed for my trip to Texas. I didn't even have to seek revenge on Terry. She lost her job, her home, my wealth, and a reliable husband who had dedicated his life to her. But she traded it all, and 35 years of marriage, for an affair with her boss. It's a shame I didn't realize sooner that I was wasting my life on an ungrateful woman. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started.
Maintaining a balance between my attachment to two men is quite a challenging task, but I'm managing it. One lives on the East Coast, the other on the West, and neither knows about the other, thanks to my careful control of the situation. There's enough room in my heart for both of them, and my job makes this easier. My job is crisis management. But don't get me wrong, we don't deal with natural disasters or conflicts. We deal with life's problems, messy divorces, arrests, dubious social media stories, addiction issues, all the modern dilemmas. Explaining small discrepancies between two households is relatively simple. I never planned for this to happen. Sure, I could apply the self-discipline I often recommend to my clients, but it seems that do as I say, not as I do, is more accurate for me. By sheer luck, both of my husbands travel frequently, and since we have no children, there's no harm in it. A change of scenery recharges me for both relationships. How do I manage all this? Quite easily. I use different credit cards for each man. Now, as I'm flying to California, I have Steve's cards with me, and when I return to Washington, I'll switch to Peter's cards, which are in my laptop bag. To ensure everything runs smoothly, I constantly update and organize them. I prefer to keep my storylines separate. I don't want them to collide. Peter and I have been married for 30 years. I met him at an auto show shortly after he turned 30, and we instantly connected. Peter is a law school professor, characterized by his glasses, tweed jacket, and goatee. A serious and reliable man. When he starts thinking, he can go on for paragraphs. On the other hand, there's Steve, who is also a lawyer, but entirely different from Peter. His specialty is licensing deals and copyright law. He embodies energy and spontaneity, always throwing out ideas just to see them take shape. On our wedding day, he didn't even wear a tie, and that was fine since it was just a fun ceremony. We were together for 2 years before the wedding, and now we've been married for 10 years. I focused on my cards under Steve's name. I always stay connected with the guy I'm with, so I'm aware of Steve's work, his family, and even his recent doctor visits. He's also deeply involved in local political matters. I spent half an hour organizing my files to get everything in order, but after finishing reading, I dozed off. Imagine my surprise when, after the flight landed, I saw Peter waiting for me at the terminal. I was stunned. My husband from the East Coast, not from California. He was supposed to be in New York at a conference. Suddenly, it felt like my two worlds were about to collide. "Surprise," he said with a broad grin, wrapping me in a strong embrace. "Why are you here?" I asked, trying to regain my composure. "I wanted to see you and say goodbye in person." "Goodbye? Oh, you already found her?" At that moment, my husband from California, Steve, approached me from behind. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Steve offered Peter his coffee, and Peter remarked, "You've got great taste in guys, Cheryl." Steve and I have a very good relationship. I seemed to be in shock. "You've got quite a few men in your life, dear, so I decided to introduce you to 2 more, Bob and Larry." Bob approached me hesitantly, while Larry grinned cheekily. As soon as they got close enough for me to notice, Bob handed me an envelope and whispered something I couldn't catch, while Larry snapped a photo. and then they promptly turned and left. Peter smiled at me wistfully. I had the thought of sending the divorce papers to your home, but then I thought, why not? After all, I've never been to Hawaii. Deciding to save up for the trip, I wanted to have a personal chat with Steve. Before this, we'd already been talking on the phone for quite some time. Then Steve said, "I have the key to the storage room where I put all your stuff." He handed me the key, and I was speechless, staring at both of them. "But how?" Peter asked, sensing my unspoken question. "It's simple. I came across your cards." The situation was unfolding in a thrilling and confusing way. Finding Steve was very easy. I work for the Department of Justice, so I can't be considered completely uninformed. Rather, I'm prone to being overly trusting. I've never been particularly skilled in this regard. They gave each other a friendly hug, shook hands firmly, and then turned to leave, leaving me speechless and bewildered. My double life had come to an end. I had been found out, and what lies ahead is terrifying to imagine. Now, I have neither a home on the West Coast nor on the East. I can't even begin to imagine where to seek help and support.
This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I had been on a business trip for a few days, which usually happened about once a month, and typically I would be away from home for about a week. But this time, I started to feel a bit homesick and missed my wife terribly. So instead of spending another night in the hotel, I decided to head home. At around 3 in the morning, I arrived home, left my suitcases in the kitchen, and quietly walked down the hallway to our bedroom. As expected, Joanna was sound asleep. Knowing that if I tried to slip into bed I would wake her up, I decided to go to the guest room instead. Truth be told, I was too exhausted for anything else, and fell asleep almost immediately. When I woke up, the delightful aroma of coffee and bacon filled the air. After taking a shower, I headed to the kitchen where Joanna was busy. "Hey, honey," I greeted her. She almost jumped in surprise. "When did you get back?" she asked. "Around 3 in the morning," I replied. I felt hungry. After I sat down at the table, she made some scrambled eggs and reheated the bacon that was already prepared. Bacon for breakfast had always been my favorite, but then she seemed a bit flustered. "Why did you sleep in the guest room?" she asked. "I didn't want to disturb you. I really needed a good night's sleep," I replied, and it seemed like a reasonable explanation. "By the way, when did you ask him to leave this morning?" Her head dropped and she seemed at a loss for words. Did she really think I hadn't noticed the man in her bed when I came home? Seeing him there surprised me, but I figured she assumed I would stick to my usual routine and return only later in the day. "Right away, as soon as I realized you were home. Darling, I'm so sorry. I just had a bit to drink, and tonight I need to go to the city to finalize a few contracts and take care of some things. We'll discuss this later. Honey, maybe we should hurry. See you soon, Joanna." I went to the city, stopped by the office to drop off some documents, and received some praise from the management. They were surprised to see me so soon and didn't mind my early departure. After finishing up my errands, I headed home, where a visibly anxious Joanna was waiting for me. "Can we talk now? The lawn needs to be mowed and there are some weeds to pull out. I assure you we'll talk soon, but first I need to take care of a few things." I went to the garage, started the lawnmower, and spent the next couple of hours cutting the grass. After that, I pulled out some weeds, annoying plants. In the evening, when I returned to the guest room, Joanna begged me to sleep with her in our bed. "I'm not sleeping in that bed anymore, but I appreciate you changing the sheets." The guest room only had a single bed, and there was no space for her, so reluctantly, she returned to her own room for the night. The next morning, Joanna made breakfast again, and as I had done every day for the past 39 years, I kissed her goodbye. She warmly received the kiss. That day was typical. I handled incoming orders from clients and dealt with the office drama that had unfolded while I was away. But this time, nothing particularly remarkable happened. Over dinner that evening, Joanna grew concerned again and finally expressed her feelings. Darling, we really need to talk about what happened. I'm worried that you're avoiding the topic. I reassured her, Joanna, we'll talk soon. I swear. Now's not the time, okay? Trust me. I headed to the guest room, and she casually mentioned that a new bed had already been ordered and would be delivered in 2 days. In response, I just smiled and walked into my room. The next morning, which was a Saturday, Joanna fully immersed herself in breakfast, preparing a more elaborate feast than usual. The morning calm was suddenly interrupted by a knock on the door. Joanna opened the door, and I stood behind her. Joanna Weston? Yes, that's me. You've been served, miss. Opening the envelope, she found the divorce papers that I had filed just the day before, and her expression turned to shock as she turned to look at me. Now let's talk, Joanna. According to our prenuptial agreement, you must leave this house with what you brought into our marriage, and you must do this today. I'll be back in the evening, and you shouldn't be here. Goodbye. I regret wasting my life on you. You're not worthy of my love. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.